All right. Well, let's get started with a word of prayer. We have quite a bit to cover tonight, but I do not want to keep you here until 10 o'clock. So let's pray. Father in heaven, thank you so much for the opportunity we have to talk about the mother's role in the kitchen. And I pray that you may give me the ability to speak what you want me to speak, and that my personal experience may be a blessing to somebody here. I pray for others that are still joining in. I pray for those listening and on YouTube later, and I pray that your Holy Spirit may be with us now. In Jesus' name, amen. So somehow I inherited this topic of the kitchen, and I don't feel necessarily like the most capable person. I did not grow up knowing how to cook. I had my mom doing all the cooking. Sometimes here and there I helped her, but nothing really that I knew. And just so you understand a little bit of my background, when I was a student at Wildwood, I was already either 18 or 19 years old. I was working in the student cafeteria one day, and this Korean chef told me, today we're having Brazilian food. And I says, oh, really? I didn't know she knew how to make Brazilian food. And she says, no, you're going to be making it. And then panic settled. I had no idea how to even make beans. But, you know, it looks really bad for you to not even know how to make beans. So I just said, okay. And as soon as we were done with worship, I walked out of the student cafeteria and I called my grandma. And I'm like, Grandma. She's like, oh, good to hear from you. You know, don't often call grandma 10 years ago overseas. And I'm like, I need your help. I don't even know how to make beans. And they assigned me to make beans. And she gives me all the tips and everything. And I feel like for me, that was the beginning of my cooking journey. I was young, I was interested, I was just making some lifestyle changes. And I started to use the little that I knew and the experience of others, the recipe of others, my husband always says the chef school of YouTube, to come up with some of the cooking repertoire that I've collected in the last let's say 11 years now. But before we get into the real practical aspect of it, I feel that it's very important for us to have a little bit of an overlook on the spirit of prophecy, on the guidelines and the inspiration that God has given us with the important role of cooking for a mother. So I will share the screen here because I do have, would you please allow me to share the screen? I have a few quotes I would like to share, and I want you to be able to see it. So I'm sharing my keynote presentation. Can you see it? Yes? Okay, so I'm gonna play it. So the mother and the kitchen. Now the first quote, now how do I move you guys out of the way so that I can actually read it? Because you're right in front of it. Let's see.
Click and drag.
Okay, let's see now. I put you on the bottom, maybe. This is not working. Okay, I'm gonna stop share and try a different one. Is it working now? All right. So it's the most elevated position. The spirit of prophecy says, and it is covering my quote, my quote reference. So I'm not going to be able to read that to you, but you will be able to get an idea of it. So it says, there can be no employment more important than that of housework. To cook well, to present healthful food upon the table in an inviting manner, requires intelligence and experience. The one who prepares the food that is to be placed in our stomachs, to be converted into blood to nourish the system, occupies the most important and elevated position. And that may be your responsibility in the home. And sometimes you feel like, oh, the kitchen again, you know, here I am stuck in the kitchen again. But it does say that it's the most important and the most elevated position, the one that prepares the food to be converted into blood. And so reading quotes like this always brings me encouragement that I'm responsible for the blood making abilities of my husband and my children and myself. But a lot of times when we tend to convert to a more healthful diet, sometimes we can make it a health deform rather than health reform. And child guidance actually talks about it, and it says often health reform is made health deformed by the unpalatable preparation of food. And notice here that it's not just focused on the health aspect of it, but how good or how bad it's going to taste. And a lot of times when we focus only on how healthy it should be and we leave out how tasty it should be, it becomes health deform as well. So the lack of knowledge regarding healthful cookery must be remedied before health reform is a success. So if you really want to make health reform a success in your home, you have to really notice how the food looks, how healthy it is, and how well it tastes, how good it tastes. Now, we need to seek instruction. And this quote is a harsh reality. I don't know how many of you have gone to vegetarian churches and eaten at their potlucks and you left really disappointed. It's happened to me. And I wondered, no, and actually I didn't wonder why several people don't choose to eat more healthy because it can taste really bad. And it says, our sisters often do not know how to cook. To such, I would say, I would go to the very best cook that could be found in the country and remain there if necessary for weeks until I had become mistress of the art, an intelligent, skillful cook. I would pursue this course if I were 40 years old. It is your duty to know how to cook. So, ladies and mothers, if you feel it's too late for you, it really isn't. You know, some start young, others do not, but it's your duty to know how to cook. That's what inspiration says. And if you don't know how, you need to seek instruction. Now, I know back in those days, probably the only way to know how to cook was to actually go to somebody that knew. But today with media, we have it at the tip of our fingers. You don't need to go to somebody's house to learn how. Maybe you should if it's somebody nearby, but you don't need to leave your family for weeks. But seeking instruction, watching videos, and asking for help for those experienced people, it's your duty to know how. Now, I often find that Ellen White has a sense of humor, and in this quote, you can really see it. Notice what she says. Scanty, ill-cooked food depraves the blood by weakening the blood-making organs. It deranges the system and brings on disease with its accompaniment of irritable nerves and bad temper. So if people are in a bad mood at your home, start noticing what kind of food you're feeding them. Now, the victims of poor cookery are numbered by thousands and tens of thousands. Over many graves might be written, died because of poor cooking or died of an abused stomach. It sounds funny, but really it's a sad reality because it's one of the things that will impact your health the most is whatever you put inside of your body. So if you're abusing your stomach by when and how and what type of foods you're eating, or if it's just because it's so terribly tasting, then something needs to change, right? Because we're deranging the system and bringing on disease. Now, of all the house duties that we have, this is the first duty of the householder. The laundry is important, the grocery shopping is important, the homeschooling is important, the cleaning is important, but God is not honored when the body is neglected or abused and is thus unfitted for his service. To care for the body by providing for it food that is relishable, and strengthening is one of the first duties of the householder. So of all the duties that you can list on your day or on your week, cooking and providing healthy meals for your family is your most important duty. Now, I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to, I'm going to have somebody read it. Kelly, can you read it? Otherwise, I can't have.
Sure. It says, children are generally brought up from the cradle to indulge in the appetite and are taught that they live to eat. The mother does much toward the formation of the character of her children in their childhood. She can teach them to control the appetite, or she can teach them to indulge the appetite and become gluttons. The mother often arranges her plans to accomplish a certain amount through the day, and when the children trouble her, instead of taking time to soothe their little sorrows and divert them, something is given them to eat to keep them still. which answers the purpose for a short time, but eventually makes things worse. The children's stomachs have been pressed with food when they had not the least want of it. All that was required was a little of the mother's time and attention, but she regarded her time as altogether too precious to devote to the amusement of her children.
So the next quote or two is going to talk about how we can train our children's appetite. So they are born, with all the tendencies that we also have, and we have to bring under control, but they don't have the ability themselves to control their eating times or the quality of food or the type of foods they're going to eat. It's your responsibility as the mother. And oftentimes, instead of teaching them to control it, we teach them to abuse it by giving food to them when it's not necessary. And food is a distraction. It's always been. I even see even at church, kids are acting up at church, parents bring out the snack to try to keep the kids quiet. And it only works for a little time, because if the stomach is not ready to receive it, it only irritates the temper even more. Now, notice what else it says. Children are generally untaught in regard to the importance of when, how, and what they should eat. They are permitted to indulge their tastes freely, to eat at all hours, to help themselves to fruit when it tempts their eyes. And you think fruit is the least of, it's the most simple thing. How can it be so bad? Well, it's not at its bad, it's just the wrong time. And this, with the pie, cake, bread and butter, and sweetmeats eaten almost constantly, makes them gourmands and dyspeptics. Gourmands are when they're gluttons, and dyspeptics is when they have indigestion. The digestive organs, like a mill, which is continually kept running, become enfeebled. Vital force is called from the brain to aid the stomach in its overwork, and thus the mental powers are weakened. The unnatural stimulation and wear of the vital forces make them nervous, impatient of restraint, self-willed, and irritable. What else does it say? I can't read anymore. They can,
Scarcely be trusted out of their parents' sight.
so they can scarcely be trusted out of the parents' side. Basically, they're uncontrolled children. And then it continues to say, in many cases, the moral powers seem deadened, and it's difficult to arouse them to a sense of the shame and grievous nature of sin. They slip easily into habits of prevarication, deceit, and often open lying. You never thought that just a little bit of snacking outside of meal times could, in the long term, tend to lead to something like that. Parents deplore these things in their children, but they do not realize that it's their own bad management which has brought about the evil. So no parent wants to see a child with that type of behavior, but they don't connect two and two and realize, I've trained up this child to be this way. They have not seen the necessity of restraining the appetites and passions of their children, and they have grown and strengthened with their ears. Mothers prepare with their own hands and place before their children food which has a tendency to injure them. And then it says, after,
Physically and mentally.
there you go. So physically and mentally, we're injuring the children. Now, should the child dictate what they eat, or is it your job to dictate what your child should eat? Teach them to deny appetite, to be grateful for the plain, simple diet God gives them. Oftentimes the simplest it is, the child complains the most, right? But we are to teach them to be thankful for what it is. It's not for you to allow them to dictate to you what they should eat, but you should dictate what is best for them. It is a sin for you to allow your children to murmur and complain about good, wholesome food just because it does not suit their depraved appetites. So, as a mom, if you allow your child to continually murmur and complain about what you've placed before them, it's a sin that you're cherishing in the child. And we didn't really have that issue with my first child. She would eat anything you gave in front of her, except that she would eat like a bird. Like literally, a grape was a meal. But she would eat anything. Now my second is not like that. And she quickly learned to say, I don't like this and I don't like that. And that was really bothering me because she was poisoning the older sister. Like she would say, I don't like this. And then the older sister, like, I don't like this either. And I'm like, oh, this has to finish somehow. And just about a month ago, we had an idea. You're not allowed to say, I don't like this on the table, even if you really don't like it. So I told them, if you say, I don't like this, you're gonna have to eat twice as much. So if I give you, 2 olives and you say, I don't like this, you're gonna eat 4 olives. But if you tell me in a different way that you don't like this politely, I will consider your request and give you something else, because I feel that it's fair enough that they may make choices, right? There are some certain things that I also don't like, but I don't sit at somebody else's table when they serve me something and say, I don't like this, So you eat gratefully or you try to choose something else. And on their own, even the 2-year-old, she came up with, I prefer green olives over black olives, Mom. If an olive accidentally falls into her plate, a black olive. And I understand we eat Kalamata olives. They're pretty strong. They have a strong flavor. It's not really what they like the most, but she will go, I prefer eating green olives over black olives. And I'll be like, well, fair enough. Give me your black olives and I'll give you some more green olives. But, the whole, I don't like spinach. I don't like kale. I don't like broccoli. None of that can happen. And they quickly learn not to complain. Otherwise, they get a double portion. And so it's our job, it's our duty to dictate what's best for the children. Now, do we dictate? There are ways of dictating. And I don't really like the word dictate because it sounds pretty harsh and severe, but it's to instruct and to teach them. And I've learned that if you use health as the approach and explain to them what kind of vitamins, what kind of nutrients they are putting into their body and what it's good for, they accept eating it just because of health purposes rather than you're eating it because I'm telling you you should eat it. There are ways of dictating it. Now, I feel that many of us feel consumed in the kitchen. I don't know how many of you feel that between food preparation, food serving, and clean up, it's just the whole day. Because by the time you're done with breakfast, it's time to start food preparation for lunch and then clean up and then it's dinner again. And there are 2 main quotes that I found that talk about timing in the kitchen. And I found it really, really encouraging. And it says, food should be so simple that its preparation will not absorb all the time of the mother. And I realized in my own cooking that the days I spend a lot of time in the kitchen is when I'm trying to make it complicated. It is true, care should be taken to furnish the table with healthful food prepared in a wholesome and inviting manner. But less time should be devoted to the preparation of unhealthful dishes for the table to please a perverted taste and more time to the education and training of the children. So when you're trying to make something real complicated, real fancy, all these desserts, it takes more time. And it takes time away from the training and the education of the children. Now, some people actually take a long time in the kitchen simply because they're slow. And I've seen it. I have been that way. And I think there's how does it go? I think it's in Portuguese. There's a saying that you dance at the speed of the music or you sing at the speed of the music, something like that. So basically, life's reality, having 2 kids crying make you cook a little faster, and that's how I've learned to go faster, because I used to have all the time in the world, but then when the kids come, you don't have it anymore. So you got to be more speedily. It says, if it falls to your lot to prepare the meals, make careful calculations and give yourself all the time necessary to prepare the food and set it on the table in good order and on exact time. It actually says it's better to be 5 minutes earlier than to be 5 minutes late. But if you are under the control of slow, dilatory movements, if your habits are of a lazy order, you will make a long job out of a short one, and it's the duty of those who are slow to reform and to become more expeditious. Sometimes I put a timer, like I know how long something should take for me to cook. If I set a timer and keep looking at it, then I keep focused. I don't get distracted with the phone, distracted with cleaning here, cleaning there. It's just food preparation, and then you get to it and you're able to put the food out there in less than an hour. Now, I'm getting now to the last part of the quotes, but maybe it's the most important, and it's about training children. This is what we're talking about here in this group. And I find it really personable to me because I do have 2 daughters. And most of the quotes, they are more directed, of course, to the daughters being trained up in the kitchen. But you would be surprised that there are quotes about boys as well. But this is one of them, and it says, mothers should take their daughters into the kitchen with them when very young. and teach them the art of cooking. The mother cannot expect her daughters to understand the mysteries of housekeeping without education. They're not going to learn on their own. It's your job to teach them. She should instruct them patiently, lovingly, and make the work as agreeable as she can by her cheerful countenance and encouraging words of approval. If they fail once, twice, or thrice, censure not. It needs to spur of it needs the spur of encouraging, cheerful, hopeful words as, never mind the mistakes you've made. You're but a learner and must expect to make blunders, but try again. Put your mind on what you're doing and be very careful, and you will certainly succeed. Now, I've taken it to heart, and I brought my kids to the kitchen before they were 1. So we basically built this little tower where they could stand. And as soon as they were able to stand without falling over, 9 months or so, they were in the kitchen with us and we were cooking. And it really sprung up in them, and both of them, the desire to cook all the time. Anytime they see me standing there on the countertop, they want to know what I'm doing, they want to help. And she doesn't specify the age here, but she says take them to the kitchen when they are very young. Now notice here, it does mention the age. Little girl, big responsibility. When a little girl is 9 or 10 years old, she should be required to take her regular share in household duties as she is able, and should be held responsible for the manner in which she does her work. That was a wise father who, when asked what he intended to do with his daughters, he replied, I intend to apprentice them to their excellent mother, that they may learn the art of improving time and be fitted to become wives and mothers, heads of families, and useful members of society. I have friends that had 9-year-old daughters cooking the entire meal on their own. So they would do days where today is your day to cook and it's my day to do the dishes, when it's usually the other way around. Kids, that's what I did. My whole life, all I did was dishes. My mom, she didn't seem to need the help, and so she never asked for the help, but it's not a matter of help, because kids, little kids, they don't come to help. They come to disturb. That's the reality. They're not there to help you. They are not helpful one bit, especially if it's 2 of them. It's twice as disturbing, but it's their job to learn from you, and it's your job to give the time to them to be able to one day become what you didn't have a chance to be when you were 10 cooking at your home. Now, it's not just for girls. Men as well as women need to understand the simple, helpful preparation of food, because one day their business often calls them where they cannot obtain wholesome food. And then if they have a knowledge of cookery, they can use it to good purpose. How many of you know of, young men who rely on fast foods because that's all they know? They don't know how to even boil water because they never had to learn from their mom. They had sisters, they had moms and grandmas, but it's our job to teach both boys and girls to know how to cook, because one day it may be necessary. Now, we're getting into the more practical aspect of the talk now, and I'm going to give you some general kitchen tips. I really put a lot of thought into this, and I may have slipped things out of my mind, but we'll have some question and answer times where you can ask. But I have 3 main general kitchen tips. Number 1, create a tentative menu to give you direction when grocery shopping as well as cooking. Now, especially if you're a beginner, if cooking is not really your natural inclination, this really helps to keep you focused. If you create like a week's menu, and that way you know what you need to buy, you know what you need to be preparing, what you need to be cooking ahead of time. My actually number 1 tip would be the second one here. Collect all your favorite recipes in a binder. This is our recipes that you find in a cookbook or online recipes, your own creations, or when you go to a friend's house. It always happens to me. I love this. Can you please give me the recipe? The friend gives you the recipe. You have no idea where you put it a week later. So nowadays, I would say about 80% of the recipes I find are online. And if I just save them in random places, I never find them when I need them. So this is what I have created and I have used for the past 10 years. This is a wide ring binder, and I typed all of the recipes that are tried and proved that I've made it. I know I like them. They work. They're not going to fail me the last minute when I'm trying. and I typed them and I printed them and put them in the plastic sleeves. There's over 200 recipes in here. And about half the binder is savory recipes, the other half are sweet recipes. But it doesn't leave me wondering. I love trying new things, but if I don't have time, I'm not gonna try something new because the chances of it not working are quite high. You can't trust, you can't trust. I have lots of cookbooks that I tried things in the cookbook. One thing will work, the other won't work. And so the safest is to always have your backup binder. Basically, it's you're creating your own cookbook, right? It's not necessarily all your recipes that you've created, but are recipes that you have collected throughout the years. And this has truly been a blessing to me. It's wipeable. If I spill it, nothing happens to it. I used to bring my computer to the kitchen, and my husband kept telling me, one day you're gonna spill a cup of oil on your computer keyboard, and that will be a game over. And so I listened to him and started to print. And it's been a huge blessing for me. If the house burns down after the kids and the husband, I'm bringing my cookbook out. That's how important it is. I always, one advice, have sandwich stuff always available for emergencies. We are not really big sandwich eaters. Like, it's not really part of a menu that I would necessarily plan, but I always have it available, always, because emergencies with kids do happen. They didn't sleep well at night, they're sick, the play date went longer than planned, or animals are sick, or you're not feeling well, you have cramps, and for you to have good quality sandwich stuff available at home for me is a lifesaver, because I do not like to take the kids out to Burger King or to Subway if I don't have to. If I absolutely don't have to. So having those things available are very helpful to us. And there are things that even my husband, which is not really a kitchen person, can go ahead and prepare. I'm not feeling well, I'm in bed with cramps, and he goes ahead and he has this nice sandwich for them, which is healthy, and they love it. Now, here are my time-saving tips. For me, the biggest challenge in the kitchen is not to spend the whole day there. So time-saving tips. Number one, buy bulk to avoid the constant grocery shopping trips. I don't know about you, but I despise grocery shopping. I do not like it. I didn't used to love it, but after having kids, it became one of my worst enemies because I've got to drag them out there with me. And I have kids putting things in the carts that they shouldn't. And you've got now COVID and the masks and the winter and all the jackets and the boots, and I don't like it. And so if I can avoid it, I will by buying bulk when I can. So non-perishables, I always try to buy a larger quantity and not just one little pound of beans that next week I'm going to have to go ahead and buy another pound. Plan to serve the same meal twice that week. Now, my husband does not like eating the same thing 2 days in a row. If your husband does, praise the Lord. But if he doesn't, serve it every other day. So that's what we do here. So I cook Monday, usually enough for Monday and Wednesday. And then Tuesday, enough for Tuesday and Thursday. And then Friday, we'll do something more simple, either soup and sandwiches, or there will be leftovers from the whole week that you can just come up with something real creative and eat. And then, of course, we try to make something real special for Sabbath. And on Sunday, it's either leftover from Sabbath, or we go to somebody's house, or we meet with the in-laws, or we go out for a restaurant. So it doesn't have to be so complicated. You don't have to be a slave of the kitchen 24/7. Now, bake extra and freeze for a future meal. A lot of times when you're baking, it takes 30 minutes to bake for one, but it only takes 35 to bake for two, and so you have to be smart. And if you're baking bread, don't break one loaf of bread. If you're making pancakes, make enough to freeze. Waffles, muffins, burgers, meatballs, tomato sauce, so that you always have for an emergency or for a quicker meal that available in the freezer. Another way that I try to avoid spending the whole morning in the kitchen is to get started in the evening after the kids went to bed. If I know it's something that will take more time, then I try to get started in the evening. You can put your beans in the slow cooker. You can already chop and prep your veggies that you're gonna do a stir fry the next day, or when the kids are eating breakfast. I don't know about your kids, but my kids take about twice as long as I do to eat breakfast. So I'll sit with them for the amount of time that I'm eating, and when I'm done eating, I'll get up and I'll try to entertain them while I'm chopping veggies and preparing for lunch. Here we usually eat lunch around 1:30, and so I usually cook lunch when they are right before lunch. They do a little quiet time, so I have some alone time. But they love helping to prep. So sometimes right after breakfast, we all prep up for the meal, and then right before lunch, I just finish it up. Another time-saving tip is to purchase pre-washed and cut when possible. And by that, I mean like salad. It will take me 10 minutes to make a salad if it's not pre-washed and cut. And I really don't like to spend 10 minutes making a salad, but I do want to serve salad every day. So unless we're eating out of the garden, which it happens quite a bit of the year, and I have to purchase salad, I like to purchase already pre-washed and grape tomatoes, which you don't have to cut. You just wash them and put them there. And matchstick carrots. You can buy the little bag of carrots already shredded. So it's really grab, put, grab, put, grab, put. It's already washed, and you serve the salad in basically 2 minutes. And it's a lot less time consuming. Now, I've had to resort to prepackaged food when needed, especially when my girls were newborns. There was a time we were even eating canned beans. For a Brazilian, that's like a big sin. I know it's quite normal in this country, but it's not normal in Brazil. But you do what you have to do, you know? And so if time is an issue in the kitchen, start buying bread instead of making bread, pizza dough, tomato sauce, frozen veggies, canned beans, whatever you need. You don't have to make that your life-term commitment, but you do have to look for alternatives to shorten your kitchen time so you don't become a slave of the kitchen. Now, learn to transform leftovers, right? So if you have too much rice, make fried rice. If you have too much beans, make refried beans. If you have too many mashed potatoes, make potato bread, and so on. There are many things that you can do. Casseroles, loaves, my husband always calls it the mystery loaf, because it's like, what's in this loaf, sweetie? And I'm like, mystery loaf, because it's leftover loaf, and you make it a loaf and the kids just love it because it's just different and it's new. Serve it with their favorite side vegetable, and that's just fine. Can somebody read the last point for me, because I can't see it, please?
Simple cooking saves lives.
Oh yeah, that was the last, but the most important. Don't try to make it complicated. I do love to make something special once in a while, but if you want to spend less time in the kitchen, the secret is simple. Cook it simple. It does not have to be complicated. The kids will learn to love simple. And by simple, I mean, you know, a pot of beans, a pot of rice, a side vegetable, some sort of protein, and a salad. That's all you need. You don't really need it to be, you know, vegetable lasagna every day. It just needs to be simple. It needs to be nutritious, and the kids will learn to like it. Now, here are my helpful kitchen tools. Get your paper and your pen. Christmas is coming. Start writing your Christmas list. You don't need to have all of these, but they are quite helpful for me. They've been quite helpful for me. I've been married for over 10 years, so I've purchased these along the 10 years, and I highly recommend every single one of them. It's not in order of preference or importance, but the number one is a chest freezer. I know not all of you have the space, but I cannot live with that little box freezer that we have in the refrigerator if you're gonna try to cook and freeze, right? So if you wanna freeze, you need to have something a little bit bigger than that. A high power blender, this is the blender that we have. I highly recommend. I use it at least twice a day. This is how much we use the blender. I mean, my husband says, he says, we wash this thing more than we wash our own bodies, you know, because it's twice a day you're there scrubbing the thing. A food processor, a lot of recipes do require a food processor, but for me, even for chopping vegetables, if you have the right blade, you know, it will slice potatoes for you, it will slice your carrots, it will shred all your veggies. And so for me, that is extremely helpful. A pressure cooker or an instant pot, you can make a whole meal in like 30 minutes. And I do not have an instant pot. Actually, it's on my Christmas list in case anybody here is interested. Just kidding. But I do have a pressure cooker, and I do use it quite often. Now, a KitchenAid mixer is very helpful if you're going to be baking. This is how we make our own bread. This is how my 4-year-old makes bread. She's learned to use the KitchenAid mixer on her own, and she can make a loaf of bread. And it's a blessing because it saves all the time from the kneading. You know, the 10 minutes that it's kneading, I've accomplished a lot more than if I was there kneading bread. Though the exercise is good for you, you can exercise doing something else. A rice maker is also something I find a lot of friends love to use a rice maker. I don't in particular because I bake my rice in the oven, and I'll be happy to share the recipe if anybody else here is interested. And a slow cooker. A lot of times I will put my beans in the evening so they're ready for lunch. There's no maintenance. You throw your beans in there, throw your seasoning, turn it on, and they will be ready. You don't have to do anything about it, especially if I'm going to be gone in the morning. Like for Sabbath, if we're going to be at church, I like to put the beans Friday evening. And when we got home from church, the beans are ready. I didn't have to do anything for them. So these are some of the kitchen tools, the bigger ones. Now, the smaller ones is a garlic peeler. I don't know how many of you know this thing, but I just found out this year and I'm completely in love with it. It costs about $4 on Amazon and it comes two of them. It's a little silicone thing that you roll the garlic inside and miraculously the peel comes off. I don't know how I've lived 30 years without it, but I do have one and I highly recommend if you like eating garlic like me. I don't particularly like to buy the pre-peeled garlic. I don't know, for me, it has a funny smell, but maybe it's the brand that I've been buying, but this has been amazing. Now, before I had smaller baking sheets and I was baking something, I would have to be there waiting for that batch to come out so that I can put another batch in. And somebody introduced me to the oversized baking sheet. It literally is as big as your oven. Like it fits, just barely fits into the oven, but you only have to put it in once. So you put your entire batch of whatever you're baking, whether it's cookies or little sausages or little buns, and boom, it's done all at once. You don't have to be in the kitchen waiting for that to finish to then put another batch in. We eat quite a bit of tofu, so we have this tofu press, which I highly recommend also because a lot of recipes will say press your tofu between 2 books and 2 plates, and it's like 30 minutes. And this thing, you just press it, and it takes about 2 minutes for you to press all the water out of your tofu, and it saves time when you're cooking it as well. Now, a good knife set. I am not going to advertise any brand because I know there are many out there. But there's nothing else that drives me more insane than trying to cook with dull knives. It makes me just like want to flee from the kitchen. So if you don't have a good knife set, and by that I mean you just touch the tomato and it cuts right through it, go ask your Christmas list for one because it saves a lot of time to have a good knife set. And even good knives need to be sharpened, so a good sharpener as well. Because sometimes your good knife will go dull and you don't have to wait for your husband to come home to sharpen your knife on the big old thing. Just buy a good little sharpener and you can do it right then, right there. Swipe it 3-4 times and it's ready to go again. So these are my smaller kitchen tools suggestions. And I will open up later for people to give more ideas if you have more gadgets that you like. I know people also like that chopping thing, the machine that you just put like your slice of potato in there and push it down and then it cuts into little cubes. I've never gotten used to that. Somehow for me, it takes longer to slice and figure out how to put in there and push it down and then washing the machine than to quickly chop it. But I know people that really love it. I gave mine away, but it could be something that you might be interested in. Now, how do you get your kids interested in helping you in the kitchen? So we've looked at the importance of having them help you, but how do you gear them up so that they will be interested in helping? So as soon as the kids could stand up, and I forgot, I was gonna add a picture of the girls when they were like little babies in there, and I forgot, but I'll send it on the band app this week. Buy them a chef apron set. Amazon has tons of it. Make it if you're crafty like people like Kelly and Lily, or buy it. This is from IKEA. This is the set that our girls have, and you can tie a knot in the back if it's too big. So, and they love it. Like they feel like they're little chefs. And also a kid's knife set. When my child was 1, she wanted to chop, and evidently I wasn't going to give her a real knife. And I bought this knife set from them from Amazon. It's called Nylon Knife. It actually will cut if you put some some work into it, but it will not cut a finger because it's all plastic, right? So I can link it up if you're interested, but they loved it. Now, when she was 3, my oldest, when she turned 3, she didn't want that knife anymore because it's limited to what it can cut, of course, because it's not like a real blade. And she started to use a small paring knife, and she's never cut herself. She's almost 5. She's never cut herself, and she uses the knife almost every day. So this will give them some practice as to what to cut, little soft things. Like if you're cutting veggies, don't give them the carrots, give them the zucchini, which is like super soft. And they're able to cut through with this plastic knife. A nice fun cutting board for them, so she feels like she's got her own cooking station. She's got her own cutting board, she's got her apron, she's got her knife, and it will help them get used to cooking. Now, this may actually be on top of the list because that was the number one thing. If you look at the bottom of the step, this is a step stool from IKEA. This is an IKEA hack that I didn't create. This was a Pinterest find for me. But it's a 2-step stool, and then you build the frame up on top so that the kid doesn't fall off. And this is how 9, 10-month-olds would stand in our kitchen to be there, and I knew they weren't gonna fall off. I should have added another picture of the other side so you see that they are protected. There is a board that doesn't allow them to fall off. And you can build this frame up on top with just, pieces of wood that you have, 2x4s that you have laying around, and 2x2s, I guess that's what it is. And it's it's been really helpful for us. We used to have one, and then my other child came up, but I didn't want to buy another one because the older one was going to grow out of it so soon. And my father-in-law built one from scratch. So he got the one that we already had from IKEA, and he built another one. She only used it for about 2 months, and then it started to be too tall for my oldest. So now we've downgraded to just a little kids chair, like a little kids chair, and then the younger child uses it. So it's very helpful. I highly recommend, because even if they're not cooking, somehow for them to be on the same level as you are on the counter as you're preparing food, even if they are playing with, measuring spoons, which oftentimes that's what I would give them, a bowl with measuring spoons and a couple beans, and they would put from one to the other, pretend cooking. And it's not real cooking, they're pretend cooking, but they feel like they're the chef of the day. Just by being on the same level and not crying, pulling your pants down or your skirt down and saying, I want attention, I want attention. So they felt like they could participate. You can go the extra mile and buy some little cooking tools. Online, you can find many options, but just something that they feel that it's theirs. The girls here, of course, they love pink, so they have their little pink whisk, they have their little pink spatula, their pink brush, the little mini rolling pin. When I'm making anything that I have to use the rolling pin, before we had it, they wanted my rolling pin. And then we bought their little rolling pin, and now they're just happy, and everybody is happy doing your own thing. So if I'm making anything that uses dough, get a little ball and give to each one of them. It will entertain them for a whole hour, and you can get a lot done during that hour that they're just rolling and cutting shapes and rolling it again, creating balls, and so on. Now, the question a lot of people ask is, how do you develop healthier taste buds in your children? Like, they don't like to eat anything. They don't like salad. They don't like vegetables. They don't like what I cook. They want to just eat whatever they want to eat. The first advice is to be an example, right? If the kids don't see you eating a big plate of salad, they're not going to be interested in it. If they only see you going for the dessert first or for the starch first, this is the habit that they're going to develop. So always have it available. If you want your child to develop a good taste for something, you have to have it often. I think it says it takes about 7 times for you to eat something and actually develop a desire for it. For a kid, isn't it? For a baby, when you're introducing food to them, it's like 7 times they need to eat it to actually start liking it. So you need to always have it available. If possible, have them planted. And I know not everybody has a piece of land that they can plant, but if you do, make sure your kids are in charge of planting the things they like the least, because somehow when it comes out of their own hands and their ability to put it on the ground, water, see it sprouting and tend to it and weed it and harvest, I have my girls eating raw kale right off the plant. I have to ask them to stop, like stripping off pieces of kale, raw kale, right in the garden, eating it because they love it so much. They grew it from when it was a little tiny seed. And so that makes a huge, huge difference. Another tip is to serve their least favorite before the rest. So if you know they love pasta or they love beans, but they don't like broccoli, bring the broccoli out first. And once you're done with your broccoli, we're gonna bring the rest of the food. So it's fair enough, they get a little portion based on their size or their liking, but remember it's your job to determine how much they should eat. And then you bring the rest of the food and they're gonna eat it if they're hungry. Make it fun looking. Recently, the girls here decided that they don't like bananas, and I have no idea where they took it from. That's what they've eaten their whole lives. And they will eat bananas in a smoothie or anything, but if I give them a whole banana, they whine. They will eat it, but they whine, and I don't want whining. So I'm like, how can we solve this? So I started to cut the banana lengthwise and make it a smiley face on the plate with the rest of the food. Suddenly now they love bananas because it's a smiley face. It's no longer a banana, it's a smiley face. And so if you make it fun looking, and there are many, many ideas that you can look up on Pinterest or even Google, just fun little food, plate foods for kids. And you can get many ideas from that. Encourage them to always try. You know, a lot of times parents will not push their kids to try. They will say, I don't like it. And then you're just like, oh, all right. You have to encourage them to try it because a lot of times they will like it, but they're just reluctant to try because they're afraid. So here we have a law. You have to try. If you definitely despise it, we'll find an alternative. But if you try it and it's not so bad, then I will encourage you to eat it. Avoid offering snacks between meals. We read the quote that she mentioned, you know, even reaching for fruit. And fruit is so innocent. It digests so quickly, but if your body isn't ready for it, it will interfere with your future meal. And so there is a quote that says, um, nothing should be taken into the stomach, not even a morsel should be taken into the stomach in between meals. And that means for 4 to 5 hours. She actually mentions 4 to 5 hours. And I know kids have faster metabolisms, but if they are trained to wait for the meals, they will learn. And it's very difficult at times because we have different schedules than other people. And sometimes you're hanging out with somebody that's used to eating at 12 and your child is used to eating at 1:30. And they will ask for food and they will beg for food. But if you're consistent and you teach them it's not time for you to eat, you will come to the point where they won't ask anymore. And so we had the way we helped the kids to come to the point where they don't complain anymore is if your friend is eating because it's their time to eat at 12 and it's not your time to eat yet because it's still an hour and a half away and they offer you something, you may take it and we'll save it and you will eat it at 1:30. So they don't feel like they're missing out because friends will always offer. It's polite to offer whatever you're eating. And so we take it and we save it. And the girls, I mean, it could be Cheerios. The other day we were at the aquarium with some friends and her little baby was eating Cheerios. And they gave the girls 2 Cheerios and they put it in their pocket. And when it was 1:30, that was the first thing they reached for, the 2 Cheerios. And there's no more complaining. It's not something that we even have to go through a big drama about because it's something that they are so accustomed to. What does this one say? I can't read.
Include them in the meal preparation.
That is a big. If they don't like something, include them in the meal preparation. Have them chop the broccoli. If they tell you they don't like broccoli, you're going to say, today is your job to prepare the broccoli. How would you like to prepare this broccoli? How do you want to dress it? What kind of salt do you want to put in it? What do you want it steamed or do you want it stir fried? And if they make it, I bet you they're going to like it a lot more than if you made it. And the last one,
Teach them to use an alternative to, I don't like this.
yeah, that's what I already mentioned earlier. So if they come to the table saying, I don't like this, remember it's a sin for you to allow your child to continually complain over the things that you have brought to them. Now, the last part of the lecture is meal planning. And before we get into that, I want to read this quote from Child Guidance. And it says, it is the custom and order of society to take a slight breakfast, which means a small breakfast. But this is not the best way to treat the stomach. at breakfast time, the stomach is in a better condition to take care of more food than at the second or third meal of the day. The habit of eating a sparing breakfast and a large dinner is wrong. Make your breakfast correspond more nearly to the heartiest meal of the day. And I know this is not necessarily an American thing because in Brazil we do the same, but somehow breakfast is really small and then dinner is the biggest meal of the day. But what are we doing to our bodies? You know, the time that we don't need so much calorie because we're not going to be burning as much calorie as in the morning is when we eat the most. And in the morning, when you actually need it, you're eating really little. So at our home, we've decided to follow this quote and flip the coin around. So we are following the old saying, eating breakfast like a king, eating lunch like a prince, and eating dinner like a pauper. And I'm gonna give you a little bit of a snippet of what we do here at home. So for breakfast, we'll eat fresh fruits, fruit, sauce, or jam. And then you have your carbs. It could be cooked cereal, granola, boxed cereal, bread, pancakes, waffles, French toast, sweet rolls, biscuits, fruit crisp, or cobbler. Now, I'm not making pancakes and waffles and biscuits every day. Don't dream that. These are like 2 or 3 times a week. We're gonna eat something real special. But the good old oatmeal is always there. You know, the corn porridge or the rice porridge is always there. And so you have some sort of cooked cereal, which is a lot faster to prepare than all those little delicacies. And you have the delicacies once in a while. It doesn't have to be every day. Now for protein, we do soy or almond milk and yogurt, tofu, sausages, veggie cheese, etc. And for fats, nuts, seeds, breads, and gravy. Now we try to make this the heartiest meal of the day to the point that we are gonna eat breakfast at 9 o'clock and the kids will not ask for any food until 1:30, 2 o'clock. They don't ask, they don't ever say I'm hungry ahead of time, unless of course they didn't eat properly their breakfast. But if I see that they ate well, I know they'll be satisfied until lunch. Now, what does a lunch look like in our home? Lunch like a prince, we'll have a green salad. Usually we try to eat our salads before we bring the hot food out, just simply because they will concentrate more on the salad and I know they're gonna eat it and not fill up on other things. So we have raw veggies and I try to make a dressing or two a week and then alternate them. And the dressing and the salad for kids make a big difference, right? If you're just trying to feed them a little olive oil with maybe your kids eat it. Mine prefer if the salad is dressed up. And the 2-year-old can eat lettuce. She can eat carrots. She can eat all of that. It's a matter of training it. And then we'll alternate the carbs. One day you can have rice, another day pasta, another day potatoes or sweet potatoes. You can have corn or quinoa. And these are all quick and easy to prepare, right? Of course, you can change and make your potatoes or your rice however you want that week, but it's a staple. You have your carbs and you have your proteins and you have your veggies. On proteins, your best friend are beans, right? So you can prepare your beans however you want. Black, pinto, garbanzo, lentils, navy, soy. These can all be made into soups or patties or loaves or burgers. Or we do tofu, soy curls, gluten, and you can have, you know, gluten stroganoff or gluten on the side or whatever you want to have with TVP or even the store-bought prepared veggie meats. It's not what we try to eat every day, but we do eat veggie meats sometimes and they do save a lot of time. Now for your veggies, we always try to have some sort of green leafy vegetable, whether it's kale, Swiss chard, spinach, one of those. The girls love it. Did they always like it? No, but they learn to like it because they see us eating it. It's there every day. You have to eat it. And then you have peas, broccoli, okra, asparagus, and the list goes on. Now, what does supper look like in our home? We usually eat supper like a pauper, right? So supper, dinner at our home is the lightest meal of the day. So I will resort to soups that are easier to digest, fresh fruit or smoothies, and they will have a piece of toast. They love toast with avocado on it. Or they have cereal and milk, like that's what they like. Boxed cereal and milk for supper with a piece of fruit. Or we'll have popcorn, they'll have crackers. They also like quesadillas, or we'll do chips and salsa and guacamole, or even leftover from breakfast, like whatever we ate for breakfast that day. If they had waffles, if they had pancakes, they'll be like, is there leftover waffles or pancakes? And I'm like, nope, I'm happy to serve you for dinner then. Now, this has really simplified my life, because if the heaviest and most difficult meal of the day here at home was dinner, I don't know how I would do it, because it's the hardest time of the day. It's the time the kids are tired, the kids are cranky. If you have babies, it's when babies cry the most, right at dinner time. And it's time for bath, it's time to wrap up the activities of the day, to take care of the pet and all of this. And so for us, having the most simple meal of the day being dinner has been really, really helpful and time saving. Now, I want you to notice what 1 Corinthians 10:31 says. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. And there is a quote that actually develops on it. And it says, what are you placing on the table? So whether therefore you eat or drink or whatsoever you do, do all to the glory of God. Do you do this when you prepare food for your tables and call your family to partake of it? Are you placing before your children only the food that you know will make the very best blood? Is it that which will place them in the very best relation to life and health? Or do you, regardless of their future good, provide for them unhealthful, stimulating, and irritating food? So it's a question that we can ask ourselves. You know, it's your responsibility as the mother to provide for your family the most helpful and that which will provide the best blood for them. And somehow it falls under your lap, you know, the choice of the purchases you're going to make, the groceries you're going to make, the way you're going to prepare it, and how you're going to serve it. And I feel that the Lord has entrusted us with this responsibility. And He, just like any other responsibility, He just doesn't throw it on your lap and leave you to wonder. He has given us plenty of counsel on how to do it and how to perform it. And I feel that one good book for you to read would be Counsels on Diets and Foods if you're a beginner. It's pretty amazing. It's got extensive counsel as to how prepare and what kinds of foods are the best for your family. So I hope this has been helpful somehow. If you have any questions or concerns or comments or complaints, I am very happy to listen. But we should probably, do you want to finish with a word of prayer before we get into questions?
Okay, I think so. That would be good. So you can
Okay.
stop the recording.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Okay. Our Father in heaven, thank you so much for just being such a good God. You know what's best for us. You know what's best for our mental health and our bodies, for clarity. And you provide us the knowledge, Lord. Thank you for just bringing Dani here to share from her experience and from your word and your counsel, Lord. Help us to have the willingness to always choose what is best for our families, Lord. Give us the wisdom through your spirit to make better decisions each day, to just take care of your temple, Lord, and just guide us in this night and throughout this week. In your name I pray, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Yes.